What is your biggest financial concern? Are you being as intentional with your finances as you could be? How confident are you that you'll reach your financial goals? How will life's transitions impact your financial plan? Welcome to the Clarity and Confidence for Life podcast with Tom Fleishel, founder, president, and CEO of Fleishel Financial Associates. Discover how we can help business owners, successful families, and corporate executives achieve clarity and confidence for life while providing tailored financial solutions that eliminate complexity and free you up to focus on what really matters in life to you and your family. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to the Clarity and Confidence for Life podcast with your host, Tom Fleishel. I'm RJ Malik, producer of this podcast. Tom, how you doing today?
We're doing great. Thanks so much.
All right, Tom, I see you have a guest, so I'm going to throw it to you. Introduce your guest and tell us what you're going to be talking about on this podcast.
Absolutely. Today's guest is someone whose journey struck a chord with us, literally and figuratively. Kevin Kertes is the founder of advanceMEN Coaching, a practice rooted in helping men move forward with confidence, clarity, and purpose. Sound familiar? That's because we share a philosophy on our own trademark process called Clarity and Confidence for Life, which reflects the same heartbeat that drives Kevin's mission. So after nearly 30 years as a senior music executive, Kevin stepped away from the music and into a deeper calling, guiding men out of isolation, helping them cultivate genuine confidence, and empowering them to live with intention, not just in their careers, but in their homes and communities. I love that because we're all about intentionality, too, for how we work with our clients. And so that's a really key concept with us. So Kevin doesn't just coach. He listens with presence, challenges with purpose, and connects through real-life experience. And today we're diving into what it means to rewrite your story, tune into your inner truth, and lead with emotional strength. So let's get started. So, Kevin, you've had a fascinating journey from performing in studios to guiding men through personal transformation. So tell us about what really sparked that pivot.
I was going through a period in my life where I needed support. And it started with, I went to therapy a little bit, but I needed something a little more. So I went and joined a men's group. In that men's group, I got to really open up with men and understand how men communicate and understand that we really did want to be open and be vulnerable. So that experience of being in that group opened up a part of me that was there, but had never been explored before. So short of going to get my MFT, I decided to get into coaching because there I could make a meaningful impact on other men's lives and help them, more move forward with purpose.
So it was something that you experienced that sparked this whole idea for you to go into more helping others and making a difference that way.
Correct.
That was such a shift from music to that. So what kind of music were you doing before?
I spent almost 20 years at Warner Brothers Pictures, being part of a team that released movie soundtracks for Harry Potter films and DC movies and Game of Thrones and all kinds of stuff that is owned by Warner Brothers Pictures. So I was part of the team that would get that from the composer up onto Spotify and Apple so everybody could enjoy them.
Fascinating. Interesting. So you come from quite an interesting background there. Let's talk about what are some of the silent battles that men are facing today that aren't really getting the spotlight or maybe behind the scenes that people don't talk about as much?
That's a good question. And I feel like it's an interesting parallel what you do and what I do. You have clients that come to you to secure their financial future and think about how they're going to live out the rest of their lives for their family and for themselves. And I think what happens is that planning about the future is more than just about money. It's like, what am I going to do now?
Absolutely. Preach it, brother.
So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, Tom.
Yeah.
It's because sometimes we know we want to do something and we don't know what. So as a coach, it is my job to figure out where your energy is around something and help you go through the thought process you need to go through to figure out what that is. I won't tell you what to do. I will talk to you to help bring out what you want to do and then help you build a plan and be accountable to get to where you want to go.
What I'm hearing is the silent battles are maybe a lot of men just don't know how to move forward in different phases of their life. Is that really kind of...
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. I mean, we go through, as men, we go through periods in our life, right? You know, you're in high school, you've got your buddies, you go to college, you go through that whole college thing. Everything's sort of planned out for you, for most men, you know, right up through college. And then after that, you have a job. Now you know what to do. You go to work, right? Right from the start, they tell you start a 401k. You start the 401k, you start saving money right away. And then you find yourself a girl, you get married. But through each of these phases, there's growth and there's fear of what to do next. You know, now that you're married, you can't be who you were before. You've got responsibilities to your partner. You've got responsibilities to your work. Then a child comes along and that's something else. So everything's taking up time. And then you go through raising the child. And that's a whole other experience, another life transition. How do I become a good father? What do I do? How do I balance everything? How do I balance my wife, my career, my child? It's a transitional phase. Child goes off to college. Another transitional phase. Now I got to talk to my wife again. What do I do now?
Now we're empty nesters.
Right, you're empty nesters. What do I do? Now I got to think about how do we save more money? I got to worry about health insurance. I mean, all this stuff is just phases we go through. And sometimes we don't process. Everything just goes along. So coaching is a process. It helps you devote time to think about what you want to do and execute a plan that is driven by you. There are plenty of people in our lives who will tell us what you think you should do. You know, your mother would tell you, you should have done this. Your buddy's like, you should do this. There's a million people that do that. But we don't sit with it enough to figure out what is really important. I've listened to an earlier podcast of yours, and you talk about this a lot, about purpose. If you don't have purpose, there's no drive, there's no ambition. Being purposeful in your ambition is how you will get to where you want to go. And coaching helps do that.
The last chapter of my book, Money is a Means to an End. What's yours? And it's all about helping people derive their purpose. And what is it all about? Money as a means to an end isn't going to get you anywhere. It's not going to motivate you. So, getting ready for that. What am I going to do with this? We've accumulated wealth. How are we going to impact the community, our family, our lives? How does that work? But one of the things you brought up too, I think is important is, especially for men, and you probably can concur here, that a lot of our significance and security and self-worth are built up into our career. And so when we go to that phase of, okay, I'm ready to retire, I'm ready to sell my business, and now what? For us, helping clients solve the money problem isn't the issue. It's, wow, now who am I? And what am I all about going forward as a man? What does that mean to me? What does that mean to my wife, my family? And so where do we go from here? So I think this is exactly what you're talking about, right?
It is. And, I have a Substack that I wrote about this, thinking beyond the paycheck. And I'll give you the link to the Substack at the end. But I talk about this, and I have a men's group. And the first question I ask in the men's group is, tell me a little bit about what you do and who you are without telling me what you do for a living.
Exactly.
Now, trying to answer that question for a lot of men is very hard for them to do. And that's why coaching is so important. You talk about purpose. Once you figure out what the purpose is, then you got to figure out how to do it. I may say, I want to start a clothing app to help men figure out what to wear to their next business meeting without repeating the clothes and buying new clothes. I just want to be able to figure something out, right? But you have no idea how to do it. So I will help you and ask you questions to figure out what it is you need to do to accomplish the goal.
So in your sessions, what patterns do you most often see? What's holding men back, and what helps them break through in some of these areas?
I think what holds most men back is they don't do enough thinking through of the process, and they don't have anybody that they can really open to about their vulnerabilities around doing something. So once they sort of have the confidence to sort of execute something that's a little bit out of their wheelhouse, that's when you start to see growth. And there has to be sort of accountability attached to them. We like to have goals and we like to have a path. So when we know what the steps are to achieve what we want, that's when more work gets done. It's when we just can't get past that first step to have some accountability. That's where things sort of stall.
A lot of ideas out there about masculinity these days, and what does that really mean? Have societal ideas of masculinity evolved in the work you do? Or are we still stuck in the same old expectations?
Before I talk about masculinity, because masculinity is an interesting word. For anything that we do, for you doing this podcast, for you seeing clients as a financial planner, there's a certain amount of energy that needs to be wrapped up in it. As a coach, we talk about anabolic energy or catabolic energy. Catabolic energy is draining and it's destructive energy. It's like when you sort of feel defeated about stuff. You just don't have the energy to do something. You're just not, you can't feel it. And then there's constructive anabolic energy where you feel like building and moving forward. It's a frame of mind. Some days you walk into the office feeling down. That's catabolic energy. Some days you walk into the office feeling like you can conquer the world. That's anabolic energy. So the reason why I mentioned this when it comes down to masculinity, I'm going to read you a definition that I put through an AI system. And I think this definition of masculinity defines it perfectly. If I may, I'm going to read this real quick. Masculinity refers to the behaviors, roles, and attributes culturally associated with being male, but it is not fixed. Instead, it changes across time, cultures, and social settings. Traditionally, it has emphasized traits like strength, stoicism, and dominance, but modern perspectives see masculinity as a flexible social construct that anyone can embody. Scholars distinguish between, quote, toxic forms of masculinity, which promote dominance and emotional suppression, and healthy masculinity, which values vulnerability, compassion, and respect for all genders. Today, masculinity is recognized as a set of practices and expectations shaped by society rather than a biological or unchangeable essence.
I guess the traditional definition of masculinity is, well, real men aren't vulnerable.
I think it depends on how you were brought up. I think in some cultures, sure. In certain times, certain eras, absolutely. But I think being a man is the definition of being responsible, being accountable, being vulnerable, being kind, being caring, and being supportive of those around you. I feel like if we're going to give it a word, we were to define it in such a way, I think that's the way it should be defined. And, some people are going to feel otherwise about it. It's a very personal decision about what masculinity is. So it's not a really easy question to answer.
Can you share a client story that still gives you goosebumps where the transformation was just really life-changing in that individual?
There was a client of mine who went through a job transition and wanted to start a podcast, ironically. And he didn't know how to start. He came from a background that had tangentially touched podcasting, but not all in. So I sort of helped him sort of work through. And as he came through and broke through stuff, I could see him light up. And when as a coach, when we see somebody sort of break through and see the growth, that's where I get joy from. And that's where I know the client gets joy from, because the most important thing for anybody to move forward in their life is that they have to want to do it. So anytime that happens in a conversation I have, that's when, I get the goose pimples.
Awesome. And that's the same kind of thing for us. When we make a difference for people's lives and see their eyes light up and, hey, I didn't think this was possible financially, but this is awesome that this can happen. That's the same kind of thing. It's what gets us up in the morning, get our feet hit the floor. That's what's fun about what we do. Let's talk about emotional intelligence. That's a word that hits around quite a bit. How do you help men build that when they weren't really raised to value that?
Again, emotional intelligence is kind of one of those words like masculinity. I feel like when you are in the moment and you are able to have a very stoic conversation with somebody and exhibit the ability to have empathy towards them and hold space for them, that to me is emotional intelligence. It's not about you. It's about the other person. So understanding that, I feel like, is the most important thing that somebody has to understand about emotional intelligence.
So it's, in your mind, it's engaging with somebody and understanding where they're coming from and what they're feeling and even emoting that.
Right. It's being present for them and understanding it's about them, and let them say what they have to say. And then you process accordingly. I think what happens is if you try and get defensive or talk over somebody and don't actively listen to what they have to say, there's a couple of different kinds of listening that we talk about in coaching. There's listening with the intent of replying right away. And that's not really listening, because all you're doing is thinking about how you're going to respond. But if you listen to what the person is saying, take that in, sort of repeat it back to them again so they know that you hear them. That makes them feel better about what they express. That's exhibiting some empathy. And that's an example of a trait that goes along with emotional intelligence.
Awesome answer. That's awesome. Great. So suppose the man is listening who feels stuck, unsure where to begin. What would you say to him right now?
Where to begin? Well, it all depends on where does he want to begin? Like, what are we talking about? Like, this comes back to, and I think this is important to understand in terms of coaching. The mentor tells you, is somebody that's gone through a similar experience that you're going through. So they will share, this happened to me. This is what you could do. There's consultants that just tell you what to do and, send you on your way. There's your friends that just say you should do this. And then there's coaching, which is like help you figure out what you want to do. So if there's a guy who's sort of stuck, he's got to figure out what kind of support he needs. Do I need somebody to help me go through this? Do I need to talk to a therapist so I can work out what I went through in the past? Do I know what I want to do, but just don't know how to build the plan? So he's got to figure out exactly where he is in his head. And then he can figure out which way he wants to go, whether he wants to go to therapy or wants to hire a consultant or get himself a mentor or get himself a coach. There's opportunities out there, but the most important thing in all this, Tom, is you're going to need to be able to be comfortable being a little bit vulnerable, get help. When you're a kid, you get help when you have math problems, or a baseball coach tells you what to do. I mean, you get support throughout your whole life, but there's a certain point where you stop and for lack of better words, you just sort of got to get over yourself and say, all right, I need help with this. How can I do this to make myself stronger? It's always about coming from strength.
Well, what you're saying is the first step is to recognize you need help and be willing to seek help rather than thinking you can self-help.
Yeah, and to figure out what kind of help you need.
Right, exactly.
It's really not that complicated.
I think that may be a hurdle for a lot of men that have an ego that, hey, I can figure this out. I'm a man. I've been around. I've done this. I've done that. I know how to overcome these situations. But, I guess if you really want to move forward, you've got to come to the point in your life, was what I'm hearing you say, that I know I need help. I know I need to move forward, but I've got to figure out how to do that and who to help me.
Right.
There's a great author that I talk about in my book that wrote something called Who, Not How. And, most people spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do something when you could hire somebody who's an expert and do this all day long and every day for their whole career. Then why would you want to spend the time trying to figure it out and probably mess it up without hiring somebody that knows what they're doing? So that concept is resonating here.
There's two things I want to touch on. I know we don't have much time, but one is the idea of our own egos getting in the way. If we were working in our corporation, right, and we needed help doing data analysis and we're not built to do data analysis, we would go and get help. We would hire an outside firm to help us do the data analysis. Think of yourself as your own little company and saying, who can I get to help me do this? It's no different.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. So if you look at it like that, and as part of your ambition, men like to be ambitious. So if you can do this and sort of build a plan, all you're doing is building who you are and what you want to do. The other part you want to talk about is the how and the why. Again, I wrote about this on my Substack, advanceMenCoaching.com, is that when you think about, we all know how to do something, but do we actually ask ourselves why we want to do it? If you don't understand your why, who cares if you do it? But if there's no purpose to it, there's no why to it, you're just like checking off boxes on a spreadsheet.
Yeah. And that's the same thing when we sit down with clients to do specific goal setting, SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time sensitive. We also kind of want to know, well, why is that important that you do this? If they can't articulate why that's important to them, well, I want to have a yacht that's 45 foot long when I retire, and we want to spend 8 months a year on this yacht. Well, why is that important to you? Or, I want to set up this foundation, a family foundation, and support all these different charities. Why is that important to you? Same kind of thing, right?
How do they answer those questions?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. They get all kinds of answers on those. What about, do you have any suggestion to our audience about any tools or practices you recommend for tapping into a sense of purpose or direction?
Tools are different for anybody. For me, I just get in the car and I take a drive, or I get on my motorcycle and take a drive. But when I ride the motorcycle, there's no radio or anything. But in the car, shut the radio off. Don't distract yourself with a podcast. Don't distract yourself with phone calls. What we do and what we don't do enough of in this age is we don't allow ourselves time to process. We're always jumping from phone to computer to call to somebody knocking on the door. We're always jumping around. We don't take enough time to process. So if you meditate. If you don't meditate, get in the car and drive. But allow yourself time to think. It takes a minute because you got to clear all the crap out. All the junk. I got to go to the grocery store. The wife is bugging me. I got to get the blinds fixed. All that crap's got to go. But once you clear that crap out, you're done processing. And that little spirally rainbow, like on the old Macs, is working. So you got to allow yourself time to process. And I feel like the only time that you can really process is in some quiet. And I feel like movement along with that is really important.
Do you suggest just sitting down with a pad and paper and thinking through things, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a book called The Artist's Way, and it's a book for creatives, in particular creative writing. And in the first part of the book, she talks about morning papers. And she wants you to, first thing in the morning, to take your pen and write 3 pages, and whatever comes out, write it down. I got to pick up the dog crap in the backyard. I got to call the plumber. I got to make a doctor's appointment. What am I going to have for breakfast? All that's the crap. Just put it all down on paper so you can process it all. And okay, that's done. I got rid of all that. Now let's move forward with my day. So yes, using paper and a pen is also excellent.
That's awesome. Well, this has been extremely helpful, Kevin. I really appreciate it. I always like to wrap up a podcast with, is there a question that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you about what you do, or this whole idea of helping men move forward in their lives?
No, I don't think there was a question you didn't ask. I do want to point out a subtle nuance about something, because there are some men who have a bit of a stigma attached to therapy. And I just want to make it clear. While I'm an advocate for therapy, coaching is very much moving you forward. Therapy is a step backward. So coaching is, like I said to you before, you're in your office, you need a data analytics team, you go hire a data analytics team. If you're a man and you want to figure out, how do I start a motorcycle repair shop within 10 miles of my home, I will help you figure that out. We'll figure out action steps that you think you should do. I won't tell you what to do. Again, coaching is not about telling somebody what to do. It's about moving you forward. Therapy is backwards. Coaching is forwards.
Very, very impressive. Thank you so much, Kevin. This has been a wonderful topic. I really appreciate your input. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Tom. I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, before you go, Kevin, can you give us some contact information?
Sure. The best thing to do is to go to advancemencoaching.com. It's advanceMEN, not advancement. advancemencoaching.com. There you'll find links to the Substack, the Instagram profiles, the LinkedIn profiles, the Facebook profiles. Everything will be on the website. Just click the little hamburger and you'll see it all.
Excellent. And Tom, your contact info.
Just go to fleishelfinancial.com, or you can go to Google Clarity and Confidence for Life, and it'll take you to our book on Amazon.
Excellent. Gentlemen, fascinating conversation. And thank you for listening to the Clarity and Confidence for Life podcast. We ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review because this actually helps others find the show. Again, thank you for listening. And for everyone at Clarity and Confidence for Life, I'm RJ Malik, and we look forward to you joining us for the next podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity and Confidence for Life podcast. Click the subscribe button to be notified of new episodes when they become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Raymond James. This content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your individual situation. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA, and SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors Incorporated. Fleishel Financial Associates is not a broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services.